off the lips. For those who are regular, you'll know off the lips. Whenever somebody interesting walks through the door, we always try and convince you to speak at our weekly slot. This week, Tim walked through the door, and we persuaded him to share some of his experience. For disclosure, Tim is an old friend and a part of this business actually, and he's going to talk about destination marketing, and I think it was actually probably largely Tim's enthusiasm about JBay and his persuasive nature that we can thank for having the green room here today, right from the beginning. So he's run WESGRO for a number of years. He's finished there now, but for about almost 7 years, you were running WESGRO, which is the Western Cape and Cape Town Tourism and Economic Development Agency. So he has quite a lot of experience talking about destinations, and he's going to share some of his experiences with us today. As usual, the format is 15 minutes of talking, and then if you've got any questions, keep them until the end. We'll have about 15 minutes of Q&A. Thanks so much. Over to you, Tim.
Cool. Thanks. I've got a lot of friends in the audience. I also have my wife. I haven't spoken in front of my wife for a long time, but it reminds me of that story about the guy who spent 20 years looking for the perfect woman, and unfortunately she was looking for the perfect man. But maybe we can ask her to kick off. I'm going to go use a little bit more time because it's just a very rapid your name and where you grew up, because I'm going to come to it at the end. It's important. So we're going to do it very quickly. Cara. Your name is?
Cara. Cara, and I grew up in Wales and moved to Cape Town in 1996.
Okay, so the right answer is Cara. I grew up in Wales. No, go.
I'm Eileen, and I grew up in JBay.
Cool. Cool. Victoria. Stuttgart.
Gary from Cape Town.
Nice, Gary.
Hello from Cape Town. Daniel from the Netherlands.
Welcome.
Sonia from Switzerland.
Richard from George and Cape Town.
Audrey from Cape Town. from the UK.
Jan from Paul, Western Cape.
Moi.
Nick from the UK. Steve, Ireland.
Ireland.
John, Belgium.
Nice.
Helena, Norway.
Timo, France. I was born in Morocco, grew up in Italy, lived in Ireland for 6 years, now in Portugal.
Cool.
Michael P.
Mel, welcome.
Oh, there we go.
Steffi, Cape Town.
Nice.
We, JBay. Ready to Limburg.
Andrew Nelson.
Moi. Okay, so I think that luckily proves the points I wanted to make at the end, so we'll remember that. But as Michael said, I spent the last 7 years running the promotion agency for the Western Cape. I now work as a consultant in the space, helping other destinations promote themselves. Before that, I was in Parliament. I was a member of Parliament until I realized that the first rule of politics is don't kick a man until he's down. And then I realized I needed to have a change. And believe it or not, government was quite a refreshing change. I went from talking about what should be happening in the country to actually doing things in the province next door in the Western Cape. So as part of that experience, I ran this agency, WESGRO. We had 120 staff members when I left the year before last. And we had a really successful run positioning Cape Town and the Western Cape. In that period, we increased foreign investment by more than 30%, increased foreign tourism by 16%, doubled the number of flights, which I'm going to talk about. So I think it was an interesting example of how you position a place at the bottom end of this continent for international business and tourism. And I've got, I think, 5 things that I learned in that period that I wanted to share with you. They're mainly applicable, I think, to African destinations. And some of them, I think, are particularly relevant to JBay. So here we go. Number one, 16 years ago, the three of us, myself, Michael, and John, decided that we wanted to see the continent. So we bought a 1981 Land Cruiser, and we drove it through 22 countries from Cape Town to London. And that's my most important lesson, actually, because when I was traveling with these guys, surfing, I kind of realized the huge potential of this continent and how any destination in Africa can most likely succeed by positioning itself as part of the African growth story. We're talking a lot about what doesn't work in government, the problems business is facing in South Africa, but there's this underlying growth momentum coming from the continent that a lot of South Africans are actually not aware of. So ever since I finished that trip, I realized Africa needed to be front and center in the way any destination, particularly one in Africa, positions itself, right? There was also a moment, you guys will remember, a couple of months in, when we had to come back to Cape Town because, number one, the boards we took were too big. We thought it was going to be mushy surf, and actually it was really good waves all the way up. And we had to come back to get jeans because we were jolling every night in these cities, like incredible, vibrant, exciting African cities that people who like stuck in South Africa don't even realize are partying to the extent that they are every night. So it went from being a kind of a camping trip through 22 countries with longboards to being one where we were jolling quite hard and riding much shorter boards and much more powerful waves. So Africa is the source of growth. The other story, this was a long time ago, it was before we were grey and he still had hair. But we didn't really have we weren't supporting a charity, there was no good cause. We were out there saying, what would it take to bring surfers and other tourists to these places to spend their money there? And what about unlocking tourism in Africa as an engine for growth? And I'll come back to that at the end. We used to call it saving Africa one daiquiri at a time. But I think that point of unlocking tourism in places where people, that are some of the most beautiful places on earth, where people wouldn't consider going, that's a key thing to get right in African destinations positioning themselves. Number two, communication is like half the battle won. If you communicate clearly and you're on brand. I always laugh. I've done a bit of work with Nelson Mandela Bay municipality next door. So you land in PE International Airport, you're landing in the city of Gqeberha, and you're in the municipality of Nelson Mandela Bay. It's a mess. Like, how do you position yourself globally when you've got three different destination brands, some of which are fairly hard to pronounce by international tourists? One of the things we did in Cape Town was make it all about Cape Town. Everybody knows the brand Cape Town, so even the rest of the Western Cape was kind of the Cape hinterland, and cutting through the kind of political obstacles to that was so important because everyone in their little town believes that they should be on the billboard in Times Square. And you have to explain, actually, Cape Town is the way in and then everybody else benefits from that growth, including JBay. We did a MOU with the Eastern Cape government to say that garden route begins and ends in Cape Town and JBay. So you come through, you fly into Cape Town, fly out of PE, or you fly into PE and out of Cape Town. And that means that travel along the beautiful garden routes is a great way of spreading the benefits of tourism between the two provinces. So just kind of clear communication is super critical, and it's hard to get right given politics and interest groups. Number three, projecting your message globally by using ambassadors. So we went through a crippling drought. You guys will know, you guys are also going through one now, but we had the whole Day Zero campaign where government was saying, basically, if we don't stop using water, we're going to run out. And one of the ways that we got the message out about tourism remaining open, but tourists needing to change the way they use water, was by using Geordie and Mikey February and Frank Solomon. So we recorded a set of videos with them, kind of surfing around Cape Town and the Western Cape and talking about how what a beautiful destination it is, but then also talking about how they're changing the way they use water. And these guys have got millions of followers between them. So we really kind of boosted the message by using our ambassadors. The other example of that is, and there's some folk around the room from these places, we have in Cape Town, Western Cape, and I think the Eastern Cape, the big markets for tourism are Germany, France, Netherlands, UK, USA. And what we did is we found people who came from those places, like many of you here, and had decided to stay in South Africa. And we used them as ambassadors communicating back to their home markets, saying this is why I came originally as a tourist, and now I'm a never-ending tourist and I live here. And we found that was a super effective way of talking about what was here using very credible ambassadors. Number 4, for all of us here, particularly at the southern tip of Africa, but I would think for almost every city that isn't, in the Middle East or the middle of Europe, the single most impactful thing you can do is grow your connectivity. So if you can't get to a place easily, it's really hard to come as a tourist or buy a product from there or invest. And so we built a team that all they did was speak to airlines about why they should fly to Cape Town. And it sounds like something that the airlines would do if there was money to be made, but it's interesting how they're open to new business cases, and that's a highly competitive industry, so they're very keen to move to outmaneuver each other. Because of that team that was very good at doing this, we doubled the number of flights to Cape Town. We added 13 new non-stop international flights right across Africa to Asia, 3 new flights to the US in 5 years. So Cape Town is now booming for tourism and investment because, in a large way, of that new connectivity. We also did some work with PE, or Nelson Mandela Bay, about them working towards their first UK flight. They're not actually, the numbers are actually there to support a UK flight with a little bit of growth in tourism out of PE. So this is an idea that we spend a lot of time working with other places around Africa on this, but I think it's a very powerful and transformative thing for most destinations to just focus on making it easy to reach your destination. The last thing is really about everyone in this room and all these places that you come from together here. My experience of the way governments structure the promotion work is they either say, they normally say, this is our investment team. It's a bunch of dudes in suits, and they talk to business, and they talk the language of business. And then over there, we've got the tourism guys with ponytails, and they're the marketing chaps, and they tell the story about the destination. Actually, those teams are merging and becoming the same team, simply because investors are now looking for the things that tourists want. So that might sound like a strange point, but we landed Amazon as the biggest investor, now the biggest job creator in Cape Town about 7 or 8 years ago. And Amazon's building out their Africa operation from Cape Town. But they told us they chose Cape Town because they could get skills from UCT, Stellenbosch, CQT, UWC. But more importantly, Cape Town was a place they could convince talented people from around the world to come to. And that's because of the lifestyle, the beauty. It's a great tourism destination. So basically, the arguments were merging. And I think any successful destination that positions themselves globally in the future will probably start to operate the same way. Your destination appeal drives your investment. And I think that's a super exciting thing for a place like JBay, because nomads and all of you coming from all over the world to be here, to work here, is a game changer for that. It's basically accelerating the pace with which global talent can move around the world and vote with their feet for places that they want to be. So if you think about the world's biggest companies, all the startups in Cape Town, they spend every day with their major concern being, how can I attract better and more talent than my competitors? Now, places like JBay, where you have arguably the world's best wave, a really great beach lifestyle that all of you are enjoying, can suddenly tap into global talent really quickly by convincing people to come to places like this and work from here. And this is one of the things we've been talking to the municipality about, which is co-working as an agent of development. What does it mean that all of you are here now, working from here, spending your sometimes foreign currency here? What is the impact of the town of attracting all of you, and how many more people could be attracted if JBay positioned itself like this? So I think it's a really exciting future for small towns around South Africa and around the rest of Africa, who can actually, by positioning themselves for remote work and digital nomads, can become kind of micro and even medium-sized talent hubs. That's going to make a lot of companies sit up and take notice, and it's going to inject a lot of capital and energy into towns that really need it, like JBay. So if you hear from all these places around the world and you're spending your money here, that's making a massive impact, and I guess we thank you for that. But please get the message out to others who could come and do the same. Because we spend a lot of time in Africa talking about, why it's poor, why we're not developed, what we can do to get growth. And it's very distracting, the state of, for one thing, energy delivery and government delivery in general. But maybe the development will come by positioning towns on their own, to stand on their own, and attract talent from around the world, like all of you. Maybe that will be the developmental drive that JBay needs, and that many places like it around the continent need. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Tim. Cool. Questions? Let's open up the floor.
It's a great question. I'd like to rope you in as well, because I know we've spoken about it a lot, and you're on the ground here. And also, in fact, if anyone else coming from Morocco or wherever, if you've got a view on that, if you work as a nomad and you've got an idea on how a JBay-based business can attract talent, I think I'd appreciate the help. We met with the founder of Nomad Base last week in Cape Town, who convenes these kind of thousands of nomads at these conferences and on these cruises. And I was really pumped after talking to him, because he said Cape Town he believes Cape Town will be one of the top 5 nomad destinations in the world in the future, because of the time zone and the lifestyle and all the stuff we've spoken about. And he's fairly, he knows all of the hotspots, and he's dialed in. So he's probably more optimistic than us. But the challenge is saying, right, everyone loves Cape Town. Let's say it's going to be full of nomads. How do we spread that benefit along the coast and to places like JBay and into the Eastern Cape? I think it's about places like this succeeding and getting the message out, effectively on social media, but also about telling a compelling narrative of business success. Michael brands the place as the place to do your best work, right? So it's not just about hanging out with cool people from town and around the world. It's actually about productivity and about growing global businesses from a small town. I think that's probably the single most important message to get out in terms of attracting global talent. Do you want to come in and then?
Have you got a question, or are you going to contribute?
Observation.
Go for it.
Go ahead.
I guess we've had quite a few questions from people looking to do more work here, looking for talent. They're looking usually for developers, should I say. Like, how do we find developers in JBay? And it's quite difficult to do. So I think solving that problem would probably be one way to making it more viable for more businesses to base themselves here.
More skills.
Or a better network of skills to tap to get that message out when you're looking for someone to do the work.
Observation around work. I work for a company called Remote.com, and what we do is, it's going to sound like a pitch now, but I'm not pitching. And I'm also making sales, so it's kind of funny, because I'm going to do a pitch, but I'm not pitching. We do compliance and payroll for remote companies. So in a nutshell, you're a company based in South Africa, you're looking for a developer, you find the person, but the person stays in one area. I mentioned Bulgaria because there's a lot of tech talent there. You can come to us and we can help you hire the person. That's long story short what I do, what we sell. And I think, so from a talent point of view, there's a massive opportunity thanks to companies like Remote, and obviously there's a big opportunity to really attract people, specifically in South Africa, specifically in Jeffreys Bay. I think it's a beautiful place. But also long term, if we look at it from a market point of view and from a, let's call it total addressable market, if you want to put some numbers, what's going to make a massive impact is for companies to understand that remote work is just work. So it's nothing like, it's work really. And I think the impact that a community like here, or like, like this co-working content is showing how remote work is really just work. Like, so of course the flexibility, it comes with like some beautiful perks, but it's really work because there's a lot of resistance from a bit more of the old-fashioned companies to this type of work and this type of setup. But in reality, if you're a good company, if you find the right people, it works. Like there's no, and of course there are some challenges around how you measure work. There are some things around remote work that is important to fix. But in a way, I think, that's gonna have a big impact. So things like people working, like connection, effectiveness, productivity, like personal productivity as well. But it's happening, and we're making this happen. That's kind of, there are a lot of companies, like competitor of ours, that are doing the same. So I'm very bullish on what the future is going to bring, and I think it's going to make a big impact because there is also geo arbitrage at the moment that I think is going to shrink it, which means that it's going to bring more opportunity, and it's going to also develop positively, like salary is going to bring. So I'm positive personally, and I think we need to make more noise, I guess.
I think you've got another off-the-lip speaker.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, man. I appreciate the perspective because you're working at the coalface. The last thing I would say on the question is people come here for three reasons, right? I think the wave, there's actually only a few destination brands in South Africa that are globally known. I think Cape Town is, I think probably Johannesburg, I think Kruger Park. I think if you're into wine, Stellenbosch, and if you surf, JBay. And the list is probably about that long. So that's a massive opportunity in terms of a global market that's aware of the place because of the wave. Number two, because of the people, like the people that gather here, and you can tell that's already starting to get much more global. But number three, the point you made about what you can do is bug the municipality about infrastructure and crime and all of the things that kind of count against this beautiful town achieving its potential. They don't control everything, like they couldn't really help on the skills front, but certainly in terms of infrastructure and the way it looks and upkeep and maintenance, that's probably the single most important thing to like help JBay achieve its potential. And those politicians respond to you bugging them. So call the councillor, report stuff, report potholes, stuff must be fixed, and then I think the town will pump. But they've got to do the work. We're also pushing them. But. I think you covered. I mean, those are two big factors for sure. Also, distance and far, right? So if someone's deciding to go to Portugal, they might have maybe misgivings about something about Portugal that they don't like. But it's going to take them an hour to get there, so they might as well try it. Like to come here is an overnight flight from most places that traveling surfers are coming from. So that was why we focused so hard on connectivity for Cape Town, to try and make it just remove the obstacles to them. And that's why I think a better connected international airport is actually key to starting to make it easier for travelers to come. But I think, probably in the surfing community, sharks and I think general crime perceptions don't help. I mean, my view on that is that Cape Town's, JBay is relatively mellow compared to a lot of other places that you hear about. I think surfing is, particularly given lockdowns, has become so popular, and this is an issue that's actually much worse in a lot of other places. But I don't surf here as much as you guys do, so you've got a better perspective on it. It's like baked into surfing. Every popular destination has to deal with this. I'm interested in any suggestions that people have, but just to come back to Carl's point, one of the reasons why JBay doesn't succeed properly for surf tourism is the government doesn't invest enough in positioning it for surf tourism. So we're working with WSL and Eastern Cape Parks of Tourism and South African tourism to like put a spotlight not just on the contest but on the whole of the Eastern Cape as a surf tourism destination. So I think watch this space. There's a bit more awareness of what's possible there. Exactly, yeah. Yeah, you've got to market if you're going to see. But the localism question is tough. These guys are crusty locals now.
Probably. I mean, I think the feedback that we get, or that I've got from many of our visitors, is that JBay is still actually very uncrowded compared to most of the international surfing destinations. So we're still quite spoiled. And that's the appeal.
Yeah.
More questions? Steve?
I wonder if there's any plans for migrant workers
Yeah.
because I think you wouldn't just attract individuals, you would attract European businesses
Yeah.
in a huge way because you're in the same time zone half the year.
Yeah.
And just a lot of
Yeah.
their workers are what they do.
Yeah. So I think for that to happen, there needed to be three things. The one is a lot of pressure, and when I was at WESGRO, we led that. I think WESGRO is still leading the campaign for particularly a digital nomad visa. You need political will, and Ramaphosa last February announced that they were going to do a digital nomad visa. The third thing you need is actual implementation, and that's what we don't have. It will be huge, though. But I think it will come, yeah. I think it will come. Yeah. The other thing about it, like, if you think about our president, Cyril Ramaphosa, he's got such an overwhelming list of problems to deal with. This is just a quick thing that he can do to spark some momentum. So it makes me optimistic that the quick wins like that will get prioritized this year. So yeah, let's see. Yeah, I don't know if you guys have seen the ZAG this month. It's a whole profile of Sapphirs abroad. I find it quite hard reading, actually. There's a lot. I mean, even if you just look at the surfers, we've lost a lot of talented surfers, talented business people. But I think a lot of them come back in the end with skills. There we go. And I think particularly the Western Cape, JBay, Eastern Cape, the kind of coastal life here can also offset the exodus by bringing in global talent. So hopefully, I'm probably more pessimistic about like the ability to do that in the Free State or up country. But certainly down here, the lifestyle is so good that I think the point you made is that remote work and digital nomads can kind of tilt things in the other direction. So I think that Michael came up with this, but this point about co-work as a developmental driver, as an agent for change in municipalities and small towns, I think it's really powerful. And places don't realize it yet, but the idea is that JBay could be a model for that. No, I left last year, 2 years ago. Yeah. So WESGRO ends at the provincial border. Here you have, it's a bit more of a mixed bag. You've got the Eastern Cape Parks and Tourism Agency that does the tourism stuff. So those are the ponytail, the marketing guys I was talking about. And then you've got Eastern Cape, ECDC, Eastern Cape Development Corporation, does the economic stuff. The reason it's complicated is because in Cape Town, WESGRO is mandated by the city, the metro, and the province. So it's all very joined up. Like the messaging is the same messaging, the team's the same team. Here, PE has the other team, East London has the other team. There's a provincial team that doesn't talk to them. None of those guys really talk to the municipality here because it happens to be run by the other side. So it's a bit more complex here. But Eastern Cape Parks and Tourism is taking surf tourism seriously, I think for the first time now, because we've been pushing them and showing the value of just the contest for the province. And hopefully they'll see it as something that can unlock the rest of the province as well. It's not just about JBay, it's about Eastern Cape as a surf tourism destination. So politically it's more complicated here, but I think the potential certainly for surf tourism is high.
So what's your next meeting?
Well, no, I work as a consultant, so helping other places do this. Yeah.
Cool. So we're pretty lucky to have Tim here today because that's exactly what we're trying to do in our small little way here at the co-working space. We're going to wrap it up there. If you've got any more questions, Tim will be around today. Maybe a little bit tomorrow, so feel free to grab him. And that's it for this Phillips. See you all next Thursday. Thanks very much for the visitors.